Please be seated. We have to continue with our meeting. Members, I have received 2 motions. One from Mr. Kenneth Leung, another from Mr. Wai-chuen and Mr. Chan Chi-chun. I'd like to have your views for the handling of the motions. Number 1, I hope that we can handle the motions today. As for timing, it can be like this. This meeting is scheduled to end at 1 p.m. I can extend that to 1:15 p.m. We can handle the motions before 1 p.m. As we are already behind schedule, I don't want the deputations to continue to wait. Because if we are to handle the motions now, they have to wait. So if there's no objection, I'll handle the 2 motions before 1 p.m. I believe you've all got the 2 motions. They have been distributed to you, including government officials. So if there's no further comment, I'll invite the deputations to come in. When will you handle the 2 motions? Before 1 p.m. 12:45? If I can handle them earlier, I'll definitely do so. As we proceed, please be as cooperative as possible, and I'm saying this to the deputations as well. Mr. Chairman, if we have comments on the 2 motions, we'll only discuss them after listening to all the deputations, right? Yes. So please invite the deputations to come in. Members, as we have a tight schedule, please try to be cooperative such that the meeting can proceed efficiently. Then if we have other issues to discuss, members will have time to express their views. So members, please be cooperative as far as possible. Thank you for attending to air your views. I invite the deputations to speak now. For the deputations and members of the public, individual members of the public, you'll be given 3 minutes each. As we have a tight schedule today, I'll be very strict in observing this 3-minute rule. You have to speak once time's up. Your written submissions and verbal remarks will not be protected by the Electoral Powers and Privileges Ordinance, that is Cap 382. So when you speak, you have to understand the possible consequences. So please take note of that. All right, Rural Representative from Shangshui, Mr. Liu Fulao. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm the representative of Shangshui Village. On Northeast NT development, I'd like to air some views. In the past, Hong Kong was only a small fishing village. Without development, we will not become a world-renowned city and enjoy the reputation of the Pearl of the Orient. So we should think of our younger generations in terms of development and planning. I did once live in a squatter hut. I can't forget the panic during Typhoon Signal number 10. Farther down, there were these people living in high-rise buildings. I envied them. So long as reasonable compensation and in situ rehousing are offered for squatter hut residents, nobody will reject the package. If any person is to reject that package, that person is not a genuine squatter hut resident. So development is a must. At the same time, the government has to consider people's livelihood. I'm a Changshui resident. In the past 30 years or so, I suffered from the threats of the slaughterhouse and the sewage treatment plant.
The administration would like to expand the sewage treatment plant. It's only 104 meters away from myself and also the Feng Kai School. So it will be moved to a cave-in. According to government statistics, the population of the North District is about 3.6 million. And there were about 526,000. And in Kutong, the population increased to 190,000, and Fannan North, 21,000. So the total population here will be over 600,000, assuming that each person would discharge 0.416 cubic meters of sewage. Then every day we are discharging 253,000 cubic meters of sewage. The Sha Tin sewage treatment plant takes up 28 hectares of land, serving 600,000 persons in Sha Tin. The expanded Shangshui sewage treatment plant will only have 9 hectares. Well, please give us a written submission. Mr. Liu Kwok-wah from the group of volunteers in the North District. Thank you. I am a North District Councillor. Mr. Liu Kwok-wah, Hong Kong's population is growing, and therefore the government must identify land for further development to increase housing supply and job opportunities, and to create business opportunities so that society can continue to prosper and enjoy stability. I support NDAs. However, I represent the Shangshui Rural Committee. I'm very concerned about the aspirations of my villagers. The government must take care of the interests of title owners, because some farmland is no longer suitable for farming. So people cannot rely on farming as a means of livelihood. I hope that the administration can resume the land and give them compensation. After they have received a reasonable amount of compensation, they can support their families and then improve their lives. Regarding the extension of the sewage treatment plant, I think it is too close to our Shangshui. The government must identify another site so that it can be farther away from residents. Thank you. Mr. Ao Hok Wan, representative of Hang Tao Village. Good morning, Chairman. I represent Hang Tao Village. I support NDAs. However, I hope that the administration can take care of villagers in the vicinity. Take Hang Tao Village as example. We have a higher population, and yet the government has not provided us with proper sewage and drainage facilities. Further development here will cause traffic and hygiene and sewage problems and drainage problems. I hope that the engineering and planning study can take care of the needs of villagers in the vicinity. Thank you. Next, Mr. Lee Kun-sin, Chairman of the Village Committee of Wai-chuen Indigenous Villages. Good morning. I support the development of NEND because this is going to do immense good to our society. Hong Kong land is limited while population is high. We are in acute shortage of land. The development of NEND is very important because the housing problem is already affecting our stability and harmony. So the development of NEND is an urgent matter. It will bring lots of opportunities and can also increase job opportunities for us. However, the administration must improve the road networks and supporting services for nearby villages to cater for future development, and the government must offer a reasonable amount of compensation to all affected villages. Thank you. Dr. Patrick C., Deputy President of China Universities Alumni Association. Good morning. I support the development of NEND. In the 1990s, the government started study on the strategic development of NEND using Kutong North and Fanning North new towns as the blueprint. Unfortunately, Ping Che and Takuling are not included in the current plan. It's been 15 years since the plan was first proposed. Most villagers and farmers are in support of the development of NEND and would like the administration to resume land as soon as possible and proceed with development. Recently, some radical legislators and individual green groups are asking to replace NDAs with the Fanning Golf Course. Yes, this is populism, and I think it's natural. But the two places are entirely different, and one cannot replace the other. The Fanning Golf Course can become part of our land reserve. Property prices in Hong Kong are high. We have a shortage of land. We must develop new land to address this problem. Every 10 years, we need something like the scale of a Sha Tin New Town to provide housing. Everyone in society should support this. Of course, there can be no perfect plans for land development. Sometimes compromises are inevitable. We have we can provide 60,000 units to house over 200,000 people, although it will require the sacrifice of a small group of people. Still, I think this is desirable. Some land here. Some say that the land will just provide housing for tycoons from Shenzhen and also those who have no permanent residence here. I think this is unfounded. We cannot sacrifice Hong Kong's people, Hong Kong's interest using such arguments. Now, if we do not develop the NDAs as planned, property prices will continue to soar and people will still have difficulties in buying homes. So we support NEND NDAs. I hope it can start the program as soon as possible. Thank you. Mr. Tang Chung Leung.
We support the Northeast Development Studies. There's an extreme urgency to finalize the outstanding pending and implementing issues which have been dragged on for so many years since the first engagement exercise in 2008 to provide the awaited housing development site. The dedication is as early as 1989. So we support the pending proposals to raise the population, the plot ratio to 6 in order to house the additional population. The current population density in New Town is 5, except in Zhongguan. The new development areas remain the same. Even the Pengche development have been delayed. The detailed planning proposal within the study area are reasonable and acceptable. The remaining issue in the implementation is the housing, the compensation issue, and we should differentiate between the public interest and private interest. The development of the Northeast NT is the provision of new housing units and infrastructures for new homes for 174,000 people and 60,000 flats. And these are in the interest of the public. And the claim for the residents of about 100,000 people are in private interest. So holding up the anti-development is not in public interest. But I agree that the display should be adequately compensated. The compensation packages, I agree with them because of time. Money compensation, rehousing, rehabilitation of cultural activities, and in-situ exchange and provide development. The whole-scale resumption of development by government is more speedy as the period of sites and land exchange for private development could be problems. However, the in-situ exchange for private development, for sizable development, is an established practice. Private developers are encouraged to settle amicably with the occupiers and within the respective site. We support the conventional new town approach to streamline the resumption coupled with private sector development.
好啦，夠時間啦。Time's up.
Okay.
All right. You can give us your written submission. Next, Mr. Ken Chi-chung. Chairman, good policies would allow people to live happily. When policies are draconian or harsh, people will not be happy. Actually, the land belongs to the people, and that's what I said at the last public hearing. Now, we have to discuss this issue again. I have to rethink what is meant by peaceful living. Hong Kong, Our Home, was a campaign launched by the administration in April. They would like to promote a sense of belonging and mutual help in Hong Kong. On the 1st of July, this year, hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets, but we could not see any positive energy. We only saw negative equity.
The government always sends this message that New Territories residents have blocked Hong Kong's development. In the process, parties with vested interest would like the indigenous villagers and residents to sacrifice themselves. They're actually suppressed by certain landlords, and some unknown people are trying to damage their properties, so they're living in fear. The whole society is divided, not to speak of social solidarity. And amongst individuals, mutual trust has vanished. Solidarity, care, etc. are no longer there. So the Hong Kong My Home campaign has actually failed. I'm not opposed to urban redevelopment. But if you don't observe the procedures and try to destroy other people's homes, if you don't expeditiously try to resolve the housing problem, I cannot agree with you. The indigenous villagers have not done anything wrong. It's the government that is in the wrong. There are wrong policies. The government did not carefully listen to the public or discuss with them. The government only proposed white elephant projects. And in order to attain the housing targets, plot ratios had been enhanced. even to the tune of 6-fold. So a comfortable living environment has been sacrificed. So the public cannot agree with you. We need long-term vision in town planning. You cannot just demolish people's homes and then build a skyscraper of 70-odd stories. There are a lot of interest involved. We have this integrity problem of the CE. I don't think the government can proceed smoothly. You have to withdraw the project. Next, Mr. Feng Chi-kin, Vice President of the Hong Kong Real Property Federation. Good afternoon, members and friends. I'm from the Hong Kong Real Property Federation, which is in support of this Northeast NT development project. We've submitted our views to the LegCo. In order to resolve the housing problem in the next 2 decades or so, the government has to expeditiously open up more land resources and build more housing units with commercial and retail facilities to enhance people's livelihood and create a good business environment so as to maintain sustainable development for Hong Kong. For Ping Che and Tak Koo-ling, the development plans have been shelved. That's a wise decision. We should make full use of our precious land resources, and the future railway development strategy must also be taken together with those 2 sites in order that the potentials can be developed to their full. And by suitably enhancing the building density of Northeast NT, by raising it from 3.5 to 5 to 6, we'll be able to enhance land resources by 28%, housing 31% more people. And the ratio between private sector and public sector housing has been adjusted to 4 to 6. That's suitable, but you have to take care of traffic and transport, people orientation, etc. For Kwu Tung North, there will be a high density residential area with a terrace topography. There must be a ventilation corridor, town park, and the Indus River. The scenery will be very beautiful, and there will be 2 public transport interchanges along the river with concentration of commercial activities. There will be a lot of facilities to facilitate the public. They will be modern and fashionable. I believe in future Fanning North and Kwu Tung North will have beautiful scenery with perfect ancillary services. They will provide perfect homes for our people. Thirdly, the rural-urban mixed-mode development should be adopted. The enhanced version of the project has added to the government-led element. Land will be resumed at appropriate times to enhance the timetable of the development project and to make sure that reasonable compensation will be given to those affected. That will let the whole project become more flexible and effective. After all sorts of assessment, the enhanced version is actually a compromise after listening to all views of the community. I hope that the government can implement the project as soon as possible. Next, the Hong Kong Institute of Surveyors, the Chairman of Land Policy Panel, Mr. Lau Chan Kong. Thank you, Chairman. The Hong Kong Institute of Surveyors supports the Northeast NT Development Project in principle. There are a number of projects relating to the development timetable, ratio of public and private development, housing developments, etc. There are a number of points here. Number 1, we hope that the government can spell out the details of land resumption and land exchange as soon as possible. For example, compensation arrangements for land resumption and the assessment system for land exchange. We would like to have the details as soon as possible. As for implementation timetable and development timetable, the details should be announced as early as possible, such that the relevant landlords and occupiers can make early arrangements if they're affected. They have to make housing arrangements and sales arrangement. And then for the ratio between public housing and private housing, we note that the element of public housing has been enhanced. But the Institute is concerned that if there's an excessive provision of public housing units, the future community may face a lot of challenges. So I hope the government can review the ratio, and where and when appropriate, the element of private housing can be enhanced in the formula. As for Kutong North and the development and planning of the town center, we note that in Kutong North, there will be an MTR station. In that regard, within 500 meters of the station, we would like to make use of the competitiveness of the development of the town center. Within 200 meters of the MTR station, some of the land sites are still being used as medium-density residential developments, that is R2. If we look back at previous new town developments, within 500 meters of an MTR station or railway station, the density would normally be high density, that is R1. We also note that the proposal covers different conditions for land exchange. Given the timetable, many land exchange applications may not be able to proceed smoothly. Eventually, there is a chance that the administration has to resume most of the private lots earmarked for development. So we would like to know the progress of land exchange to see how it can match with government's development timetable. As for compensation under land exchange, how will that be? Time's up. Next, Shonghim Tong East Village representative, Ms. Jody Ao-Young. Thank you, Chairman. This is not my first time here. I'd like to mention some personal particulars. Originally, I would like to speak in Hakka. Previously, there was a speaker in English. The bureau director nodded his head. Perhaps English is easier for him. In fact, when I was a child, there was already this idea of developing Northeast NT. Nobody discovered that a big flyover is overhead in our village. Shonghim Tong is so tranquil. Nothing happened. Should we allow the project to get through so easily? A few days ago, the consultancy gave us a catalogue, and somebody told us that the government would go its own way. And then that person said that the flyover would be greened. How will that be done? Did the administration come and consult our village? About 2 years ago, the consultancy came to the rural committee, Hung Yi-kok, every now and then by mentioning fragmented information. We submitted written comments to them. Every time they sincerely told us that they had accepted our proposals. But every time, everything was back to square one. Be it legislative councillors or district councillors, nobody ever came to comfort us. We don't need comfort from you because we don't want to politicize the issue. For the bureau director, let me just give you these remarks. You have to respect us and communicate with us. Yes, respect and communication. Just now in the common room, I heard that you're a fervent Christian. 90% of our residents are Christians. You also studied in New Asia College. Just think of the founder of New Asia College. You should respect everybody and communicate with everybody. Why is it that government relationships with our village are in a mess at the moment? Last night I couldn't sleep because I was afraid that I would be speaking in a mess. A lot of people criticize mainlanders. We're all Hong Kong people. We should not be divided. So please bear in mind these two words, respect and communication. Otherwise, we'll be pointing our fingers at one another. Next, 香港本土番茄控大聯盟 the founding member, Miss Lam Nui. I'm a founding member of our league. We opposed the anti-Northeast development plan. We thought that tomatoes are not good enough till we went to Italy and had a tomato course. There are different types of tomatoes. Well, tomatoes of different flavors and taste, with a thin skin and a very juicy flesh. In Italy, fresh tomatoes were cooked. We envy their blessings. We don't need to envy them. With Northeast NT, we can have tomatoes personally grown by the farmers there. We can enjoy that blessing here. We don't need to import foreign tomatoes. We don't need organic tomatoes. We don't need mainland tomatoes. We don't need to go to Rome to eat Rome tomatoes. We can grow the same tomatoes in Hong Kong. Our league opposes the project so that Hong Kong people will enjoy their right to eat good food. Hong Kong people should know tomatoes are fresh. A third of our kitchen waste should go back to farming for the planting of tomatoes, and we can enjoy the tomatoes again. Hong Kong people should be able to eat their own delicious tomatoes, so we should guard our farmland here. And Northeast NT is our last piece of land for this. It's the last space for us to breathe. So we have to protect Northeast NT so that Hong Kong people can choose their own lifestyle. Hong Kong My Home campaign is to give a positive element to our life so that Hong Kong people will feel proud for Hong Kong as a city and their home. Will you be proud of your 3 generations in your family? But now, the homes of 3 generations are to be destroyed. Hong Kong will no longer be a city as it is now. Let me tell you this. Today, if you demolish other people's homes in future, your home will also be destroyed.
Next, Mr. David Fong, Wai-chuen District Council Member. According to the Hong Kong CNSD, 30 years down the road, we may have a population of 8 million in Hong Kong. So I do see the need that we have a new town so that there can be homes for Hong Kong people, and there will be room for further development. However, I have something to say about the NDS. New towns should be sufficient in its planning. We should not just blindly follow the targets of housing construction and overlook the need for local jobs, whether it be Anti-North or Hong Shui Q or extension of the Tung Chung New Town. I don't think we are providing enough jobs locally for residents. As a result, this will aggravate air pollution, traffic problems, and noise in the urban areas. Wan-chai and Admiralty are already so crowded. We will see more and more people coming to Wan-chai in the future. Because Ping Chair is now removed, there are only 22 hectares of land left for commercial users to provide 37,000 jobs for the residents in the NDAs. That means most grassroots living here will have to travel to other districts to work. This will mean heavy traveling expenses. This is against the CE's idea that people should work in the district where they live. So the government must have a comprehensive industrial policy. So there should be more room for industrial and commercial development in the NDAs to increase jobs. 58 hectares of land is reserved for farming. For better utilization of farmland, we should have a long-term primary production policy to assist the residents to properly use new and high-tech for farming on farmland. In the long term, we can then have safe and quality food, and we should also promote the development of primary production in Hong Kong. Thank you. Ms. Wong Chat Tai from 新界香港本地農協會. Thank you. On NENT-NDAs, we have the following requests. In the land resumption process, there is a limit for compensation. You should increase the limit by 2/3 in some cases, and you should compensate villagers for all the facilities built on the land. And there must be in situ rehousing so that we who would want to farm can have farmland, and those who want can have PRH housing. And we should also develop a base for organic farming, and we should also build the North District Park. The government should have policies to assist the farming industry so that we can have sustainable development and the livelihood of farmers can be ensured. Thank you. Mr. Lam Kam Kwai, Vice Chairman of Takuling District Rural Committee. On behalf of the Rural Committee, we against the replanning of the Pingche Takuling NDAs. In 2008, the government launched the first PE on the development of Anti-North, and it's a 3-in-1 development, Kutong North, Fanning North, and Pingche Takuling. In 2009, in PE2, there was a preliminary development proposal. Kutong was supposed to be diversified development node, and Fanning North, city or town by the river, and also Pingche, an industrial area. So they have different roles and functions, and they will complement one another. That's the whole idea behind the 3-in-1 development model. In 2010, PE3 in the OZP, there was no major change. There was no major change in the theme. It was still a 3-in-1 design. The three places would complement one another. However, in this month, the government talked about replanning for Pingche and Takuling. That means the 3-in-1 model will no longer be followed. The three places can no longer complement one another, and the 3-in-1 balance is lost in terms of employment and also housing. There is no need to revise the plan for Pingche and Takuling. And there is no need to put Pingche and Takuling into the Anti-North study. We should go for the previous OZP. Pingche and Takuling NDA should be a place where we have quality industries, so that we go by the 3-in-1 planning idea. Over 80% in Hong Kong are for NENT-NDAs. Based on the information provided to them in PE1, 2, and 3, they have not have access to the latest document. Now, if we consult them once again using this document, I don't think they will agree because the balance is now lost. Thank you. Mr. Wong Wai-chuen, Takuling Kantau Wai Village representative. Thank you, Chairman and members of the panel. I do not just represent myself here. I also represent the voices of many villagers living in Takuling. The administration has shelved the development for Takuling and Pingche, and we are very unhappy and find it regrettable, because most villagers in Takuling We're looking forward to development in Pingche. Now, Pingche is covered by weeds. It's just a remote, rural environment. We hope that with new development, we can form a community here with higher a bigger population, so that once a community is built up, we have the necessary facilities, we'll have shops and markets. Then when the population has increased, there would be enhanced transport support, so that residents don't have to go to Shangshui and Lunmo Market. Even in Pingche, NDA, we can have access to necessary community facilities. There are also voices that farmland should be preserved. I feel, rather, that if the government has no policy on farming, it is unrealistic to give any comments on farming. Our aspirations can never be realized. So, when it comes to the conservation and preservation of farmland, I hope the administration can formulate a farming policy to support this industry. Thank you. Mr. Man Hing Sun from Takuling Pingche Village representative. I am the village representative of Pingche Village. We support the development of Pingche Takuling NDA because the government has gone through more than 10 years of study and planning and 3 rounds of consultation. And if the plan is shelved suddenly, then it is not good. Our villagers are engaged in farming since the 1990s. Since the operation of the landfill in our water supply has been cut off, our well water has been polluted, and farmers can no longer farm. We want the administration to continue to develop the Pingche Takuling NDA. Thank you. Next. Mr. Yik Wai Tong, Takuling Fung Wong Wu Village Representative, Chairman, and members of the panel. I come here without any protest or dissatisfaction. My only aspiration here is to urge the Development Bureau to give us a new timetable for Takuling Pingche NDA. I repeat, my only request is that the Development Bureau give us a planning program and a time frame for Takuling and Pingche as soon as possible. As the saying goes, now we come to a dead end, we should change, and then there will be a way out. I hope the Bureau can do something substantive and do good for our village. Thank you. Next, Mr. Lam Chu Kwong, Takuling Shangshan Kai Wat Village Representative. Good afternoon. I'm Len Chi Kong. We agree to the 3-in-1 anti-North NDA plan because it is an excellent strategy to address our housing and livelihood problems. We should develop an NENT 3-in-1 NDAs first before we go to other areas. Well, I think it is an inevitable trend that society must develop and progress. Most villages here are for the plan because they can improve our living environment and can benefit our economy as well as livelihood. And future generations can enjoy the fruits of the development here so long as the government can offer proper compensation and rehousing to affected residents. It has been on the drawing board for more than 10 years. If we do not move expeditiously, how many more 10 years will we have? 2047 is just around the corner, so we must move quickly. Now, if Hong Kong is to fall because of the stalling of the NDAs here, then it's your responsibility. Thank you. Mr. Lee Yi-mui from Takuling Lei Oak Village representative. Good afternoon. I'm executive member of the Road Committee there. Our village has more than 400 years of history. There are over 700 villages living here. The NDAs here have been on the drawing board for more than 10 years, and there have been 3 rounds of public consultation. It's always said that Takuling, Pingche, and the other areas will be developed together. All of a sudden, Takuling and Pingche are taken out, so there will be a lot of harm. The rivers, well, whenever it rains, water is flooded up to 4 to 5 feet, and our furniture and our property has been damaged. And the agricultural land has been left fallow for a long time and covered with weeds. We're not allowed to change land use, and villagers do not have any income from their land. Our indigenous villagers have to travel to other districts to work. Traffic expenses are high, and it's also time-consuming. As a result, our quality of life has been affected. And life is not so enjoyable. I think the government likes to bully Takuling. Landfills, food waste, and the columbaria, and also and other things are always put near us. I hope the government can include Takuling in this NDA project so that we can see improvement in our lives. Thank you. Mr. Kenny Yu, Takuling Chuk Yuen Village representative. Chairman and members of the panel, good afternoon. I represent Takuling Chuk Yuen Village. I am all for the government's NTNE NDA plan, and I also hope that the government can include Takuling and Pingche in this development plan. If the government can ensure a proper compensation and rehousing, so that all affected villagers and residents can be duly compensated, I will support the government. Besides, there is a Lian Tong Hang Yuen Wai port at Takuling Chuk Yuen Village. Well, it was announced on the 19th of August 2000, and yet the government has dragged its feet.
Every day, our villagers are being restless about and worried about this project. I believe many electoral members have been misled by the DLO of North District. They always said that compensation had been settled, but in fact that's not true. We have 12 indigenous families destroyed. As for the rehousing timetable of the administration, theoretically, in July this year, Chuk Yuen Village should be relocated. I hope that the DLO can tell us to what extent this plan will be delayed. Every day, we're living in uncertainties. Same for me. I've been living in this village since birth. up to now, the administration has not notified us when we'll be relocated. Is it because of Liantang, Hengyun, why our homes will be destroyed? Some of our villagers are still living in their decades-old homes. They've not received compensation. They're not fairly treated. I hope that the Secretary will spend some time to visit our village to understand the actual situation. Our village has not been treated fairly. Thank you. Next, Takuling Tai Po Tin Village Representative, Mr. Choi Yut Ming. Mr. Chairman, members, good afternoon. I represent Takuling Tai Po Tin Village Representative. I'm Choi Yut Ming. We have 300-odd residents in our village. Most of them are in support of the development project. The government says that there's not enough land for housing. Why don't you develop our area? It's such a big site. If you use it, you can create a lot of jobs, and our young people don't need to go to other districts to work. It's just like in my village, the river is only trained halfway, and then work stopped. Now the situation is even worse than before. Every time when it rains, our village is flooded. For Pingche, Takuling, our villagers can wait no more. We don't want landfills. We have to develop Pingche, Takuling. Thank you. Thank you. Next, Mr. Chan Shu Wing. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Paul Chan, Secretary, honorable members, good afternoon. I'm from Pingyang village of Takuling, but I don't speak Hakka. Why? 40-odd years ago, my father left this poor village of Takuling. He led us to another rural area in the New Territories known as Wai-chuen and Wai-chuen, because back in those years, the administration spent a great deal of effort in developing Wai-chuen and Wai-chuen. At that time, it was known as a satellite town. We were given a PRH unit. 2 generations of our family lived there. We witnessed how Wai-chuen and Wai-chuen developed from a village into a new town with factories, residential units, and all sorts of commercial and public facilities. We have Hoi Pa village, Sai Lau Kok village, and other villages. Their land had been resumed for the construction of the MTR station. Let me ask the honorable members here, will any of you oppose the administration's development project for Wai-chuen and Wai-chuen, which had developed hugely in the economic sense? The same now happens in NT Northeast. We have our homes here. Why is it that the project is smeared as a project to betray the villagers there? 10 years ago, I sold 2 houses there. And then in 2003, I moved back to Pingyang village in Takuling because my ancestors were there. I had deep feelings for it. 10 years ago, there's only one highway there, Sha Tau Kok Road. 10 years on, there's only one road. I tried to be a Sunday farmer, a holiday farmer. The field by our side was turned into a farmland by an elder at a cost of $3 million. He suffered a total loss. He had to go to an elderly home. I don't know whether he is still with us. We know that Liantang border boundary control point will be commissioned in, say, 2017-18. I think we should allow Hong Kong's economy to develop in a more balanced manner. So please be more prudent on this. Start Pingche Takuling development afresh. Will those in the public gallery not interrupt the proceedings of the meeting. Next, Mr. Ip Wai Ming. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I speak in support of the Northeast NT Development Project. I also support the idea that in terms of planning, it should be public housing led. In March this year, the government announced that there are over 220,000 people on the waiting list for PRH, and the average waiting time has exceeded 3 years, which is the performance pledge. And 170,000 people are living in subdivided flats, according to conservative estimation. Some organizations say that that's an underestimation. In order to improve our living conditions, we have to build more housing units. Therefore, we need land for the construction of housing units. I believe that's what the administration has to do. Whichever term of government we're talking about, whichever CE we're talking about, we need to resolve this issue. As for the development of Northeast NT, studies have been going on for over a decade. In the past 10-odd years, time, energy, and human resources, as well as all sorts of resources have been spent on the studies. If we are to shelve the project, effort and resources will be wasted. Chairman, if this Northeast NT development project is not to materialize, then in future, what about Tung Shui Kyu development? So this Northeast NT project will impact on other development projects. Should there be confrontation in society? I think we can consider mixed mode development. For example, farmland and urban development can be combined. In this area, there are farms that can provide jobs. Leisure farming can also be considered. And all along, we've been advocating for diversification. And then for Northeast NT, 2 issues have to be resolved. Job opportunities, that is employment, and traffic and transport. If you don't solve these problems well, the whole Northeast NT development project will fail. Employment. It's said that 33,700 or 37,700 jobs can be created. Anyway, the Northeast NT development project should commence as soon as possible. Thank you. For the speakers today, if you have brought with you written scripts before you leave, please hand them to our Secretariat staff so that councillors can fully understand your views. I have already said that I'll extend the meeting by 15 minutes, so we have 35 more minutes to go, but we have to reserve time for handling the 2 motions I received this morning. It's now time for members to ask questions and make comments. Now I have 4 members, 4 hands, 5. Ms. Emily Lau, Dr. Fernando Chang, Dr. Kenneth Chan, Mr. Frederick Fong, and Mr. Long Kwok Hong. Any more? Mr. Chan Chi-chun? Any more? I want to calculate the time available for each member. I have to leave enough time for the 2 motions. Otherwise, we may not be able to handle both motions. Mr. Chairman, I can give priority to Mr. Albert Chan's motion. Mr. Kenneth Chan, Mr. Kenneth Leung, do you want to speak? What I said was, in handling the motions, I hope that you will handle Mr. Albert Chan's motion first. All right, 6 members have raised their hand. No more? I'll draw a line there. In order to control time, I'll give 2 minutes to each member. Ms. Emily Lau? Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank our guests for coming here to air their views. I heard that most of them are, well, some of them are in support of the project, some not. There are problems here. With our Bureau Director, there's this integrity issue with him, and many people in society do not trust him. Thus, they have huge reservation over the project. Given this painful and difficult process, if the Bureau Director is to continue to be responsible for the project, is the administration confident in getting it through? Who will answer this? Mr. Chan? I believe Mr. Chan is very dedicated to this Northeast NT project. There are two different issues here. For his personal integrity, we can take care of that. But this Northeast NT development project is very important, so we must observe the original plan. Mr. Chairman, the lady at the back has raised her hand. I support the Bureau Director. I'm an indigenous villager. I shed a lot of tears for Northeast NT development. My family and I were put under huge hindrance and pressure. Why? What sort of pressure was that? As the chairman of my organization, I can share the feelings of Mr. Paul Chan. I'm a chairman of an organization. I can speak my mind today. I really want to develop agriculture in Hong Kong. I know that Mr. Paul Chan, the secretary, shares my feelings. Next, Dr. Fernando Cheung. Thank you, Chairman. I hope that you can process the two motions as early as possible. The problem facing us today is related to the integrity of Paul Chan. That's a major concern. We, of course, thank the deputations and individuals for coming here to air their views. Some were in support of the project, others against. But if the Bureau Director cannot allay worries and doubts about suspicion on his hoarding of land, we can't proceed. Mr. Kenneth Leung has moved a motion to ask for the disclosure of land interests possessed by the Bureau Director, his spouse, and family. It's said that some media reports were not reliable enough, including this Oriental Express Limited, which is involved in the operation of subdivided flats, and he claimed that 70% of the shareholding don't belong to him. So I just want to know whether the Bureau Director is in support of this motion.
Secretary, am I supposed to answer? Or do you want to respond now, or do so in general later? Well, I've got 2 minutes. He should say whether he is for or against the motion. Secretary. Chairman, according to the statement by Guokman Gongsi issued yesterday, they've already commissioned an independent value surveyor to evaluate the land, and after that, the land will be sold in the market according to market value. So that means myself, my wife, and my land will no longer have any land interests in NENT. The shareholders of Guokman Gongsi, and that is the family of my wife, will no longer enjoy any interest after the land is sold as proposed. Dr. Kenneth Chen, thank you. More company will come, and I think we all agree that today we cannot come to a definite conclusion considering the various interests involved. Chairman, Paul Chen, the Secretary for the Development, appears not unwilling to to say anything. We have over 100 journalists outside. They would want the Secretary as an accountable officer stand still and answer questions properly. But I believe he is planning to leave in the afternoon, and he will just issue a statement. Perhaps he thinks that by issuing statements he can be an accountable officer. He will either say he cannot remember, he has forgotten, and he doesn't know. I think this is against our spirit of accountability. Now, if this is to go on, Chairman, I'm afraid every time we meet for the development panel, we have to continue to deal with Mr. Paul Chen's integrity issue. Now, Mr. Paul said that his team will deal with the NDAs properly with the best interests of Hong Kong in mind. Perhaps he should give up his personal interest for the sake of the wider interest. He said that at present he has no interest and that he will sell the land. I think this is already too late. He was not vigilant enough. He was too slow in his response, incomprehensive, and he has been giving out information as if he was squeezing a tub of toothpaste. I don't think a tube of toothpaste. I don't think it is desirable. Mr. K.K. Phil. Well, I think Paul Chen is just resorting to sophistry, just like C.Y. Chen in answering queries from us and the media. He said that is owned by his wife and his wife's family, when in fact it is his son. Well, since you have once owned land here, I don't think you can get rid of the suspicion. So I would like to ask Mr. Chen once again whether he will resign or cut himself clean from the development of NENT, because it is necessary. Because if the compensation package is too generous, people will say that you're only favoring yourself and your wife's family. Now, if you set the compensation at too low a level, people will say that this is just to clear yourself of the suspicion. So either this way or that way, he cannot really be cut off from this. So I think the simple way for him to handle this matter is to resign. I will ask Mr. Chen once again. I give you one more opportunity. Will you resign, Secretary? Certainly not, Chairman. As regards some other points, I will give a general response after all members have spoken. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, I can't really see you. I can only see your T-shirt. Thank you. Right, Paul Chen recited the motto of his college. I think he is greedy. He will get all the benefits first. I'm not from New Asia College, but I appeal to the alumni and students of New Asia College to stop him from quoting from the school song. Well, he cut lane when he had consumed alcohol, and he was let off. I think originally he and his wife were committed to serve the community. Unfortunately, their willpower is too weak. I won't say that you are very greedy. I think you are not a bad man in nature, a bad person in nature. The question is, even if you're not a bad person, if you cannot help trying to gain benefits and advantages, what should you do? So I am not targeting you personally, but I think you should resign. Yes, I've been very rude to you. I ambushed you just now. Now, you have already put Mr. Siwa Leung on the spot. You said that you reported to him. Now, you even drag your son into question. Now, let me tell you, Siwa Leung is very tricky. Would dare you follow what Mr. Lau Mong-hong did? Now, it's useless. Even the boss of that magazine had his head bashed. Now, if you really want to do something for Hong Kong, resign. Well, you don't have to be the person who sees success. So even you want the thing to be done, to get done, you don't have to be the Secretary for Development. Mr. Gary Chan, many members of the public have expressed their views in the 2 sessions of public hearing today. Many of them do not trust you, Secretary. Now, if you want to regain their trust, you cannot just say you have forgotten, you don't know, you are not sure. We've given you ample opportunities to explain. So how are you going to move forward? We're not interested in hearing that you're going to sell the land. Well, Anthony Leung was willing to make a donation equivalent to several times the price of his car, but we did not accept it. So we asked you about the consideration of the shares sold to your wife or sold by your wife. You refused to answer. I'd like to ask you, in what way were the shares sold? Using cash or check? If it is by means of a check, what bank was it? Did the process involved any accountancy firm or law firm? Now we are trying to help you. If you don't want to tell us the consideration, we don't ask about the consideration. We'd like you to tell us the whole process. We're not querying whether your wife has received any money. We're not asking how much she has received, but did she ever really receive money for the transaction of shares? Anne Jiang? Thank you, Chairman. I think it's easy if I stand on the side of the opposition party. It's easy. We just join them in their attack. But as legislators, we have to be cautious. The land was bought by the Secretary almost 20 years ago in 1994. Back then, there was no NENT plan at all. And secondly, the Secretary has already duly declared his interest. You may say that, well, the public were not aware that although the land was no longer held by the Secretary, it was being held by his wife. But why didn't the Secretary declare on behalf of his wife? And Gary Chan also asked how much did her wife get for that land. Now, Mrs. Chan is a professional, and usually as professional, women are financially independent. Well, frankly speaking, I won't tell my husband how much I have purchased. If he asks further, I will say, do you have any ulterior motive? The revised, going back to the revised NENT NDAs, well, the land bought by Mrs. Chan was a private plot. Now it is turned to HOS. It proves that whether the secretary is serving his private interest, because the value of his plot is much lower than if it were for private development. Your time is up. Does any other member wish to speak or ask questions? If not, I invite the secretary to respond. 4 minutes, please. Thank you, Chairman. I thank Mr. Chair Wai-chuen and Madam Wong for their understanding and support. Mr. Gary Chan asked about the details of the transaction. Well, when I attended the meeting of this panel the other day, I also said that a transaction agreement was signed and there was stamp duty paid, and yesterday my wife issued a statement stating that the consideration was real transaction, and the consideration was near close to market value. And Mr. Chan asked whether she received money for the transaction. As far as I know, she did. And I think the accusation against me by Dr. Kenneth Chan was unfair, it was biased and misleading. Dr. Fernando Zhang mentioned the company Orient Express. There were some reports in the media yesterday. I have listened to my sound recording. Dr. Kenneth Chan said that I dare not face the media, I dare not answer the questions. Actually, on Monday and Tuesday, I took the initiative to meet them. All right, on that day, before I came into the room for the Development Bureau meeting, I took the initiative to tell the media that my wife once owned land in Kutong through a company. And there was some remarks before that. And I have listened to the tape recording. My wife was once the director and minority shareholder of a company owned by herself and her family members. In 1994, that is 90 years ago, the company purchased farmland with a size of about 20,000 square feet. And when I came into the room, members asked how much my wife owned in that company. I said 3/8 or 37.5% of the shares. And then 2 hours later, I left this room and was asked by the media whether I had any beneficial interest in Orient Express, and that was what I said. Well, I had no beneficial interest in Orient Express. It was owned by my wife and her family members.
Concerning the first part of that statement, the farmland is held by a particular company with a number of shareholders. And one of the shareholders is Orient Express, which holds 37.5% of the shares of that company. And through that company holds 37.5% of the farmland. When I was there, people only asked me about Orient Express, so I only answered that part of the question on Orient Express. So maybe that led to misunderstanding. All right, for the remaining time, it's 1 o'clock now. Well, this morning, as I said, I received 2 motions. One from Mr. Kenneth Leung, another from Mr. Albert Chan and Mr. Chen Chi-chun. Mr. Kenneth Leung submitted his motion earlier, but just now he said that he would give priority to the motion moved by Mr. Wai-chuen and Mr. Chan Chi-chun. Dr. Chang Lai-wan, Mr. Chairman, according to our rules of procedure, in handling such motions, normally there will be 3 steps. Step 1, the panel chairman should consider whether the motion is directly related to the agenda items of that meeting. Step 2, the member can then move the motion. Step 3, a majority support is required for passing the motion. Mr. Chairman, the motions are totally unrelated to our agenda items today. Thank you for raising that. I was about to mention something similar. Now we know that there are 2 motions which were submitted this morning in sequence, in their respective orders. As Dr. Chang just said, are these motions related to our agenda items today? Are they directly related to the issue under discussion today? I've read the 2 motions. In scrutinizing the Northeast NT Development Project and the implementation details, I rule that the 2 motions are directly related to our agenda items. Just now I said that we should leave some time for the handling of the motions. Mr. Kenneth Leung mentions the order of voting. Now, this meeting must finish by 1:15 p.m. I don't know whether we can finish both. So, first of all, I have to handle your opinion. Dr. Chang Lai-wan, Mr. Chairman, in the past, for so many years, at panel meetings, if there is a request for a bureau director to resign, how many precedents do we have that panels had agreed to such motions? How many precedents do we have for disagreeing with handling the motion for stepping down? If there's no president at all, then Mr. Chairman, you'll be the first chairman to allow such a motion to be discussed. Well, this is something to do with other panels. Will let me control the time? Yes, Mr. Chairman, but let me remind you once again. Do we have such precedents in which a panel chairman disallowed the moving of a motion on the basis that it is not related to the agenda items? Was there a precedent in which the chairman of the development panel disagreed? Dr. Lo Wai-kwok. Mr. Chairman, should the members of the public remain when we discuss this? It's not necessary for them to stay on. It's up to them. If they want to stay, they can stay. Mr. Chairman, if a member has already asked the question, you have to handle the question. Please read the rules of procedure. Mr. Lam Kwok Hong. Mr. Chairman, I hope that members won't describe Dr. Chang Lai-wan's remarks as filibustering. Don't describe Dr. Chang Lai-wan's remarks as filibustering. Don't insult the word filibustering. Mr. Chairman, can you be more efficient under the rules of procedure? Yes, we have to be quick. 2 minutes. Mr. Chairman. Dr. Lo Wai-kwok, Mr. Chairman. Normally under AOB, members of the public need not be present. So I'd like to clarify the rules of procedure. Well, let me remind you, we're not under AOB yet. Mr. Chairman, last time you sought legal advice after making a ruling. What about this one?
上次當然啦，即係有一個議案，咁亦都即係劉皇發主席咧，亦都徵詢咗啲法律顧問嘅意見，考慮各方因素。
At the last meeting, the chairman sought legal advice and clarifications before making a ruling. For these two motions, as I said just now, I consider them directly related to our agenda items today. Should we do this? Let's take a vote. Let's take a vote on whether or not we should handle the two motions now. So we have to handle the motions from Mr. Albert Chan and Mr. Chan Chi-chun and from Mr. Kenneth Leung. Allow me to speak again. Albert Chan, Mr. Albert Chan. Chairman, please rule whether or not Mr. Albert Chan has offended me by way of his remarks just now. Let me say this. As LegCo members, please do not speak concurrently. Mr. Chairman, Dr. Chang, please stop. A point of order. Mr. Chairman, you have already announced just now that a vote should be taken, so please take a vote first. After the vote is taken, members should feel free to say whatever they want to say. I just want to see what question Dr. Chang has. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. To, Mr. Chairman, we've heard your ruling just now. We have to take a vote. I know that everybody has a lot to say, but Mr. Chairman, at least you should leave 3 minutes for the vote. 5 minutes. As for the remaining time, we can let Dr. Chang Lai-wan have the floor. So, Mr. Chairman, please implement your ruling just now. Please take a vote. Dr. Chang Lai-wan, are you on a point of order? Well, Mr. Chairman, the case has already been referred to the ICAC for investigation. Dr. Chang, let me handle the motion of whether or not we want to handle the motions now. It's a point of order, Chairman. You have the deciding power. All right. I'll see what members think, whether or not we should handle the two motions now. Those who are in favor of handling them now, please raise their hands. 10. 10 in favor. Any objection? 1 objection. All right, so it's agreed that the motions be handled now. Mr. Chairman, I claim a division. Please ring the division bell. I have to read out the motion first. Please respect the proceedings. Mr. Albert Chan. My motion is the Northeast NDA project involves public interest, use of public money, land planning and housing needs. But the Secretary for Development, Paul Chan, and his family are suspected to have owned land up to 18,000 square feet in the area, and government's planning and compensation decisions on that area will hugely benefit Paul Chan and his family. In his office as Secretary for Development, and his declarations of the aforementioned land interest of himself and his family, Paul Chan has caused society to query his integrity and has not fairly, justly, and reasonably handled the Northeast NDA development project in terms of compensation and planning matters. In view of these considerations, this panel urges Wai-chuen to immediately resign from the post of Secretary for Development to ensure that his integrity issue will not impact adversely on the governance of the SARG and the Northeast Anti-NDA development project. The Assembly now claimed a division just now. Of course, we'll do it by a show of hands. We don't need to ring the division bell. If we ring the division bell, we'll go beyond the scheduled time. Yes, you claim a division. Mr. Albert Chan and Mr. Chan Chi-chun. We don't need to ring the division bell. If any member requests the ringing of the division bell, then you have to do it. I request that the division bell be rung so that members will know that a vote is being taken at the moment. Well, then we'll exceed 1:15 p.m. If there's any objection to a further extension, then we cannot extend the meeting. Well, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. we'll have another meeting. It doesn't matter. Put it on tomorrow's agenda. We can have more thorough discussion. That's even better. Well, in fact, after the division bell has finished, we have exceeded the scheduled ending time. So we defer the motions to tomorrow morning. Any other business? No? Thank you very much for attending today's meeting. Mr. Chairman, you said that you scrutinize the motions tomorrow morning. So do you mean that you will handle the two motions at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning? Right.